Coming up on today's Next Fan Up.
Always beware of the guy who's played opposite a star player, as one of my sayings, of course, Jay, as you know.
Hate to cut you off because you're doing a wonderful job of ranting incessantly.
That is the most sensible answer you've given for a long time on this podcast.
We're navigating through the first week of NFL free agency. Here we go.
Can you guys hear me? Sorry, hold on.
32 super fans.
I couldn't understand a word they were saying.
One PodVader.
You fired up for that, man? Huh?
Every angle of the NFL covered.
We on go time. We still on go.
This is Next Fan Up.
We're live, bro.
Hello and welcome to the NFL's new year. Happy free agency, everybody. I'm PodVader, here along with two of our superfans, Neil, our Washington superfan, James, our Eagles superfan, to break down week one of NFL free agency and the beginning of the NFL new year. Hey, Neil, how's it going?
Hey guys, it's great to be here, new league year, and you guys have changed your clocks because you are weird. You're always a week of 10 days early.
Listen, I hope they do away with this stupid changing of the clocks thing sooner rather than later. It'd be great. I don't mind living in the dark. We have lights, the electricity. It's this brand new thing. It's great. James, your team has been quiet for reasons we all know.
Well, they should be.
Yeah, take the hint, James. You can do the same.
Oh, gosh. I'm not saying much. The hour this week has completely messed me up. I've now been awake for over 36 of them.
Yeah, you haven't told us why you've been awake for 36 hours. What's going on?
I don't know. I have this active mindset and imagination that just won't shut up at night. So I try to do things to go to sleep, and none of them work.
Wow.
In case I haven't said it since the new league year started, I hate you guys.
Inappropriate jokes aside that were edited that no one heard except James saying that he hates us.
James,
nextfanup at gmail.com is how you get in touch with us, at NFU Podcast on Twitter. Now, as we go through free agency, we're not going to go through every team. We're going to hit on quite a number of them. And obviously, there's one team in particular that happens to have a pretty big fan on this particular show. And we're going to talk about them probably right off the top. We'll do our best not to make it Patriots today, but a pretty good section of today's show is going to be about the Patriots. We have a second episode coming up with other superfans this weekend. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you are following this podcast wherever you hear your podcasts, whether that's Apple or Spotify or Google or Amazon or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because we are everywhere that podcasts are heard. So make sure you follow so you don't miss that episode when that one drops. Before we jump into all of the free agency stuff, I have a wonderful story I want to share because I always brag about my son. I don't get an opportunity to brag about my daughter too often. But here in the state of Connecticut, many, if not all, of the state police cruisers are silver in color. And the other day, as we were driving, we saw a state police trooper drive by. And I went, oh, look, it's a copper. And my daughter, in a fashion that can only make one so proud, went, a copper? Looks more like a silver to me. And Dad Joke Thursday was born. I was so proud of her. It was such a great moment.
That was lovely and good on her. But why are you calling policemen coppers? That's a British thing.
Whatever. It's a policeman, a copper. Right. That's what I said.
Is that something you call? You do that over there, yeah?
Every now and then.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Every now and then.
That's good to see you're learning slowly.
Yeah. A copper looks more like a silver. I was so proud. I was so happy.
We tend to call them the fuzz. I don't know why, but that's what we call them. The fuzz.
That was a great movie. That was a great movie, Hot Fuzz.
Okay. You're thinking about James and his 36 hours again, aren't you?
No, not at all. Speaking of James, not Eagles James, but Texans James, kicks us off with this comment. I blanking hate dumping on players to get their money when the owners would run their own mother over with a steamroller if it meant their fourth quarter EBITDA goes up and another 1/10 of a point. The cap is a way for owners to pocket more profits while making it appear to the fans that they can't spend more money. So it's really the player's fault the team isn't competitive. Just wanted to share that as we go over all of these players that got signed to your favorite team, that the cap, one, is crap because there's plenty of teams that were way over the cap that are nowhere near over the cap anymore magically. Oh, it's funny how creative accounting works. And two, the cap is something made up by the owners to make sure that they don't overspend themselves.
That last point is probably the key point. You look at we looked 2 weeks ago at the various teams. I think we were looking at Kansas and the Saints. Will they be the two worst ones?
They were two of the worst ones.
And we were saying, how on earth can they get under the cap? But of course, at the end of the day, this is a key point with the cap. Key points. A, it means really nothing. If you want a player, you'll get him. And B, the owners, it is a way of helping the owners to make more money by not spending it on players. And of course it's also makes a mockery of the whole thing that a team who are $57 million over the cap a few days before the deadline can, with a few swishes of a pen or a few taps of a keyboard, can get themselves under the cap. It's absolutely meaningless, really, other than the fact that it helps to cap the salaries of players. It's a salary cap, yes, and it caps players' salaries, and makes more profits for the owners. It's an absolute disgrace. It's another ridiculous aspect of the sport,
and it keeps the Eagles from being competitive. So there's that.
Well, they also
Howie Roseman is doing a good job of that by himself.
That's Super Bowl winning GM Roseman, is it? What are you talking about? God, you honestly, you're so thin-skinned, you Philadelphia fans. I mean, you had a Super Bowl when, like 3 years ago or something. Yeah, there's some teams like Detroit. Detroit, I don't know if I've ever been in a Super Bowl. I mean, you want to toughen up. It's like.
All right, we're going to jump into some of the free agent signings that have occurred, and Warren Sharp is going to help kick things off here for us. So now, as the recording of this podcast, there have obviously been a number of signings. There will be a number more, probably since we've recorded this podcast and before it even got posted, that will occur because, I mean, I think I went to bed last night and then I woke up and there were 10 other signings. It's ridiculous. So there'll be a ton more signings. And like I said, there will be another episode coming up on Saturday.
Go to bed.
Well, listen, Neil, I am a strange man that likes to go to bed early and wake up early. I don't know. I worked on a morning show for years.
You've had the thing called sleep. What's that like?
Yes. So Warren Sharp.
You two are just weird. Jesus.
Warren Sharp at Sharp Football. So far, 11 of the top 15 spenders in free agency are from the AFC. The number one big spender, who we'll be getting to in just a moment, New England, $245 million. Jacksonville is third at $143 million. Tennessee is fourth, $112 million. Cincinnati fifth, $109 million, which is odd for Cincinnati. The Jets, Chargers, Kansas City, Houston, Baltimore, Las Vegas, and Cleveland round out those AFC teams. The four teams in the NFC that have been spending money: number 2, San Francisco, $156 million. Number 7, the defending Tampa Bay Buccaneers, $88 million. 8 is Washington, $85 million. 11 is Detroit with $54 million. Just to give you sort of an idea of where we're going today, we're actually going to be talking a lot about the Patriots, Jaguars, Washington, Bears. Did I say Cardinals? Meant to. Titans. We'll mention the Eagles, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the wide receiver market, which didn't go the way I think many expected to, or maybe many did expect it to, and just for being quiet. That's what we have on tap for today. Field Yates adds one more thing about restricted free agents. Only one restricted free agent received a first-round tender this year, and that's Rams cornerback Darius Williams. Just so that you know, if you don't know, a restricted free agent means with a first round tender means you have to give up a first round draft choice to sign said free agent to your team if the team that he's currently on decides not to match the contract that you have offered. There were a number of notable second round tenders. Chiefs cornerback Charvarius Ward, Ravens running back Gus Edwards, Colts tight end Mo Alley Cox, Packers tight end Robert Tonyan, and now we get to the Patriots. Patriots cornerback J.C. Jackson was given a second round tender.
Are you keeping him?
Well, at a second round tender, I fear that he is cheap enough to steal.
For
sure.
For a second round pick. Ooh.
He's pretty good. He is a number one.
Yeah.
He filled in quite admirably for Stephon Gilmore for a couple of games. He wasn't as good as Stephon Gilmore, but he's definitely good. He's definitely a solid, let's put it this way. He's been a solid number 2 for the Patriots for a couple of years now as an undrafted free agent. So a second round tender is a pretty good haul for the Patriots if they don't retain him. All right. Here's what the Patriots have done so far. And according to at Pat's Cap on Twitter, who runs a fan-based cap space, New England Patriots centric, the cap numbers for all of the Patriots signings so far this offseason: Nelson Aguilar, $7 million. Hunter Henry, $6.875 million. Matt Judon, $6.375 million. Jonnu Smith, $5.6875 million. Jalen Mills, $4.5 million. Devon Godchow, $4 million. Dietrich Wise, $3.25 million. Kendrick Bourne, a little over $3 million. Henry Anderson, $2.75 million. Carl Davis, under $1 million in terms of cap space. I bring this up because while the Patriots have gone out and spent all of this money, the number one team in free agency and almost the number one team ever in the history of the NFL, their cap numbers are fairly reasonable, especially Nelson Aguilar, whom I do not see as a bargain even at $7 million.
Oh, you got to let me say something here because I'm getting more and more annoyed as you speak. No doubt you're going to have some positive spin on all this nonsense, but I think the bottom line for me when you're reading that list out, I was thinking these are all the roster spots that your draft has failed to deliver in the last 2 or 3 years. These are all these are all roster fillers to pad out your squad depth, if you like, which was always one of the strengths of the Patriots, obviously, and that's what this has struck me. I mean, I don't know what you guys think. I just generally have felt this is an extraordinarily weak free agency class across the board, not just what the Patriots are, but just generally speaking. And yeah, the Patriots got a few guys there, but there's nobody there that stirs my loins.
Oh, well, my friend, you're not a Patriots fan because we're obviously extremely excited to see actual tight ends on the roster again with a Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith combo. That actually stirs a lot of Patriot fans' loins right there. Davin Godchow was a guy that I had highlighted on my bargain list as a guy that teams should be targeting as a guy who can help compete on the defensive line, and the Patriots needed defensive line help.
All right, take a pause for the cause here, Jay. I can agree with you having a couple of tight ends on your roster to open that what used to be, of course, one of the great aspects of your offensive play when you played what's much more 12 personnel or whatever. But I just don't. I think the idea is fine. I just look at the players and think, yeah, okay, Hunter Henry, he's been a serviceable to average to occasionally good, sometimes injured tight end. And you got Jonnu Smith, who again, reasonably decent player, but this isn't the return of Gronk and whatever the gun wielding chat was called in your team. Hernandez. This is not that. It's not even Hernandez and Gronk light. It's super light diet, barely water light. This is I just can't get excited by thinking that this is the future of my offense, and my offense has been improved by bringing in two fairly average guys. I like the idea. I just don't like the players.
I like the players. and the idea. The problem is the idea is incomplete, which we'll get to in just a second.
It is, yeah, because you haven't got a Hall of Fame quarterback. That's the point.
Right. The Patriots also signed Ted Karras, center, who was formerly with the team. He played last year with the Miami Dolphins. This pretty much signifies David Andrews is leaving the team. It's disappointing to me because, quite honestly, just pay David Andrews the extra $1 million. Like, I'd rather have David Andrews than Ted Karras as my center. But okay, sure. Ted Karras is a center, and he can play the position. He did okay when he was with the Patriots. I didn't really pay that much attention to the Dolphins, but I'm sure he did fine. Patriots will also be rejoining with Kyle Van Noy, who was cut by the Dolphins. He gets a 2-year deal with a base value of $12 million and a signing bonus of $4.9 million.
James, I hope you've noticed there that all of a sudden he's lost the title of Van Annoying, or you were calling him last week, the week before.
He's still Kyle Van Noying, but he also brings back the Boogeyman, which is one of the great nicknames for a defense. I'm very happy about that.
I mean, but then of course you've got the other linebacker. Hightower should be coming back as well. But
right.
But Snowy's retired, doesn't he?
Who?
Snowy.
Oh, you mean Patrick Chung? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can spend more time with chalk lines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Let it snow.
Very good. Up there at Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. Sure. Yeah, that'll be what Patrick Chung's doing. I'm sure that's exactly what he's doing. My hope is that Jalen Mills can become the next Patrick Chung. Be kind of nice. See the same thing happen.
Was he an Eagle, James?
If he trips over white powder and gets into legal trouble, he absolutely will be.
James, was he an Eagle?
I meant sucking with the Eagles and being great with New England.
Well, that all depends on how you all play him. Again, he's an adequate safety at best.
Yeah.
At worst, he's a football player. We'll take from that whatever you will, but the mistake will come if you ever line him up at corner or in man-to-man coverage.
Adam Schefter had tweeted out, in less than 24 hours, the Patriots guaranteed over $137.5 million, which was second in NFL history. I do not believe they broke the record, which was set by the 2020 Dolphins at $147.2 million. Now, one of the points that a lot of people are making is just because you've won free agency, and I don't necessarily think the Patriots have won free agency, is that all of these changes didn't result in a lot of greatness for these other teams. The 2020 Dolphins, who have the record, missed the playoffs. The 2019 Jets missed the playoffs. The 2016 Giants lost in the wild card. The 2018 Bears lost in the wild card. By the way, the 2018 Jets also missed the playoffs, spending a ton of free agent money.
Those words, Jay, you've won free agency. Those must send chills down your spine at that thought of that. I've had years of Washington winning free agency only to vomit their way through a season. It's just I fear for you, my friend.
I think this is cherry picking. But it's cherry picking because I seem to remember the LA Rams winning free agency and losing in a Super Bowl. I seem to remember the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning free agency and winning a Super Bowl.
But did the Buccaneers really win last year, though?
I think so.
James, I think we've got a task to do here. We have a responsibility to our friend here to try and help him through this fog and mist that he's obviously living in.
Nah. Let him walk through blindly among the trees.
You're a heartless.
I am actually. Yes, I am. But yeah, if he wants to walk through the forest blindfolded and hit every single tree trunk on the way through, then so be it.
That's right.
I don't know what you're talking about. The Patriots did address needs, and I will say they started off strong and really fizzled out as the spending went on. Like, I was getting less and less intrigued with the spending. It started off great. Jonnu Smith, I didn't expect it, was very happy. Matt Judon, didn't expect it, was very happy. Jalen Mills, Pass.
See Matt Judon.
Pass on that one.
Oh, see Matt Judon. We discussed Matt Judon when we looked at the free agency list a few weeks ago, and I think about Matt Judon. We were surprised how low he was down the list of the sort of top 100 free agents, whatever it was. But also, he's a guy who's kind of existed with the Ravens and sort of made a kind of name for himself when other players around him have been much better. He's a funny player. He doesn't quite get the amount of sacks and pressures as you think he does. You think, oh, Matt Judon, he's been great. Must get at least 12 sacks a season. But I think he's way down in the sort of sacks in his career, but seems somehow to have garnered himself quite the reputation.
So there was a guy in Patriots past who was very much like that, who went by the name of Mike Vrabel. Might remember him. Might know him in Tennessee, but he wasn't.
Nope, never heard of him.
He was okay in Pittsburgh, kind of like Matt Judon, but didn't become the player he was until he was in New England. However, on the flip side of that, there was a player who made a name for himself in Baltimore, made a pretty good name for himself in Baltimore, and sucked in New England. Adalius Thomas.
Ooh, yeah.
So I'm hoping Matt Judon is not another Adalius Thomas. And
I guess, Jay,
a little bit more Mike Vrabel.
My thoughts when I looked at your free agency list, and I know watching it coming in during the negotiating period we had there, and so the thing that was striking me, and I don't know how you feel about this, but it was telling me, every move was telling me this is a team that's going to be trading up for a quarterback.
Well, now that we've gotten to the quarterback portion of this conversation, the Patriots did, in fact, re-sign Cam Newton after our last podcast, I believe, which I was not very thrilled with at all, even in a backup capacity. And he's got this weird contract.
How thrilled? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being peeing yourself with rage and 10 being running around and kissing your neighbors because you're so happy. Where were you on that scale?
I'm at -1.
You pooped your pants then at some point.
Yeah, exactly. It's
why?
Gosh.
Cam Newton cannot throw a football. He cannot. You
mean former league MVP Cam Newton?
I saw a whole year of Cam Newton playing with the New England Patriots last year, and he cannot pass a football to save his life. He can't.
Okay, so hold on, time out. Hate to cut you off because you're doing a wonderful job of ranting incessantly, but let's take his passing numbers and break them up into 2 parts, before and after he contracted COVID-19, because in the beginning of the season, he had some pretty solid passing numbers. I do remember a Sunday night game where he and Russell Wilson basically lit up the scoreboard with yardage and completion numbers. They both threw for something like 350-plus yards.
Yeah, you mentioned the team, though. You mentioned the Magic team, the Seattle Seahawks, who didn't have a passing defense to save their life.
Hold on. But after, and he's admitted this in several interviews, after he contracted COVID-19, he was never right for the rest of the season. And, his stats pretty much when he came back from having COVID-19 were abysmal at best and horrific at worst. But, I mean, this is something that we have to take seriously as far as, like, his whole year. You can't just encapsulate his whole year as to being completely horrible. I look at it as before and after when he contracted COVID-19 because, the latter half of the season when he had COVID-19, he was basically still trying to get healthy, and he wasn't. We knew something was wrong.
It's more than just healthy, James. He had no mechanics. He doesn't have proper mechanics to throw a football. The ball is almost always at the receiver's feet. And if it's not at their feet, it's sailing over their head.
Hold on.
If I wanted
coordinator and the quarterback's coach, because that's their fault.
If I wanted to say something positive about Newton, I would say that what they've done in free agency in terms of getting a couple of pass catching tight ends will absolutely help him. I think if you look back to his Carolina time, who did he throw the most passes to in Carolina during his career?
Greg Olsen.
Greg Olsen, the tight end, and I think, and of course he was lucky to have, the various running backs. They've always had a strong running game in Carolina too. With Stewart and the other guy at the time, and then McCaffrey most recently. So I think having those shorter passes out of the backfield and mid-range passes there to a couple of pass-catching tight ends will absolutely help him. Because I think you're right, Jay. The supporting cast around him last year, especially towards the end of the season, was terrible. And we've talked about your wide receiver group.
It was bad.
And obviously you've signed Jason Bourne's brother, so he's got to help surely. And I think that will help, but you still need more of the offense. But I think Newton can be serviceable.
Back.
So Edelman. Right now, the talk about Edelman is that he's still rehabbing, and probably best case scenario, he starts the season on the PUP, which means he misses the first 6 weeks of the season.
What was wrong with him?
Yeah, he's got a knee issue.
He opted for surgery last year after week 3.
That's what happens when you pump your body up with steroids and your body frame can't take the extra muscle and power that you put on them.
Here's the thing. I'd rather have the guy who catches babies out of flaming buildings than Nelson Aguilar at wide receiver. Kendrick Bourne.
Nelson Aguilar dropped another touchdown pass.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point.
Yeah,
from a quarterback who can't throw accurately.
Yeah, but to be fair, Aguilar had a reasonable season with the Raiders. I think you can't deny him that. I know the time in Philadelphia was a disappointment, but for his draft status especially. Compared to his draft status, yeah.
I think it's a disappointment, Neil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Kendrick Bourne is a nice piece that maybe he's a guy that can develop, but he's not a number 1 or a number 2 receiver, not right yet. I can't put that on him.
But you also are trying to deal N'Keal Harry. So
he's terrible. He's Nelson Aguilar part 2.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about it later, but there are a number of free agent wide receivers out there that you could have had over either one of these 2 wide receivers at a fairly reasonable price. And I get it, probably 2 to 4 of these guys are going to command top dollar, and we'll get to that later, but I feel like you're signing a wide receivers doesn't really help. I mean, if these are just going to be guys and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith are going to be targets 1 and 2 on every single pass play, okay, fine.
But you're going to need guys. You're going to need a guy to take the top off to make Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry work.
Well, I guess that's what both of these guys are supposed to be, because technically they are speed guys. They just don't threaten anybody deep as far as, this guy would definitely catch the ball. So what if he run past me? But will he make the catch? If I challenge him, probably not. And unfortunately, both of these guys fall in that category.
Back to your point, Neil, that you were making about draft and moving up and taking a quarterback. My concern is not only that this offense is being built around a guy like Cam Newton with Cam Newton skills, is that it's going to be a quarterback who's like Cam Newton, and that's a Justin Fields. I know you've mentioned that Trey Lance matches better with Cam Newton, but I am concerned that Justin Fields is the quarterback that they have their eyes on.
Yeah, I think you could be. I mean, you're sitting at 15, Jay, correct?
Right.
In the draft, and I would say, looking at most of the deals you've done, these are 2-year deals that you've done. And I think you're looking at trading up, getting one of these quarterbacks, giving him at least half the season, try and get at least to a sort of a 4-4 after half the season next year with Newton, and then get this guy in and try and push you on to the playoffs, and then you've got his rookie deal going forward, and then you get rid of Newton at the end of the year. That was kind of the way I see it. In terms of Lance, it's just a personal favourite. I favour Lance over Fields. I think Fields might be good enough as well. You're not going to get Lawrence or Wilson, so it's going to be either Fields, Jones, or Lance. Lance is there. I mean, it would be an extraordinary moment for North Dakota State, because they've never had a really good quarterback coming out of there, have they, James?
What was the school again?
North Dakota State.
No, never heard of them. Wait. Oh yeah, they're the Bison, not the Bison. Yeah,
Bisons.
Those guys.
I mean, the other thing is the wide receiver piece missing. Maybe one of the big 3 falls to 15. I'd much rather have a Jamar Chase or Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith.
I think there's an issue there in terms of what we haven't really seen so far in free agency have been some major trades. And I think players like, and it was Allen Robinson, was he was franchise tagged, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
But I think he's still available. And I think you might find there are a few top receivers in the league who would be available. So you might see the odd trade here and there. If you got Allen Robinson for a second round pick, that would be fine, wouldn't it?
I would be happy with that, especially for a second round pick. That would be fantastic. Or how about player for player? I'll give them Stephon Gilmore for Allen Robinson.
Well, I think you're undervaluing Gilmore there.
Wow, interesting. So you think Stephon Gilmore is worth more than Allen Robinson?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I would think, Jay. I mean, we're going to speak about wide receivers later, but there's wide receivers everywhere, and plus you're going to have a draft this year where you could be looking at up to 40 wide receivers going in that draft.
Yeah.
And look at recent years. I mean, recent years, everybody's picking up. I mean, Washington got an outstanding receiver in the third round a couple of years ago. There's receivers everywhere. I mean, James will tell you that. I mean, James, tell us about receivers and in the draft. I mean, just outstanding.
I don't feel like making myself cry right now. Let's wait a little bit.
Last point I'll make about the New England Patriots, and we can move on, is they currently have about 25 to 29 million in cap space still after all of these signings. And if we're talking about a quarterback, then there's still room, maybe just slightly, for one of those guys, Deshaun Watson. That would fit right in to the salary cap as currently set. Be kind of nice.
But then James was telling us all about issues, off the field issues for Watson, and you wonder if his trade value is dropping with, one first round pick drops off his value with every new case that seems to appear.
That is an interesting thought that I didn't think about. Just to quickly address, there have been 3 lawsuits at the current time that have been levied against Deshaun Watson from a sexual assault matter. That's obviously concerning, but at the same time, I am slightly weary of the accusations that have been levied.
All alleged cases against him. I mean, he certainly, going by what we've read, he certainly has the Patriots way when it comes to massage.
Gosh, dang it, Neil. All right. So speaking of the Patriots, I think we're good talking about the Patriots. I will try not to bring them up.
Jay, but I've got to kind of say, Jay, overall, with what you've done so far, and I guess that's the key thing for this podcast, isn't it? Is to say, our teams have done this and this and this. Are we happy with it overall, or so? I mean, are you happy with what the Patriots have done? Are there things you have done differently, or things you still want to see apart from the quarterback and wide receiver position?
Well, see, to me, that's the quarterback is the most important part. So to me, everything is still incomplete. Like I can't be head over tails about the guys that we've signed until I actually seen the finality of it. And right now I don't see, without the quarterback, if the quarterback is Cam Newton, I'm not thrilled with us spending all of this wonderful cap space. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. So at the end of the day, it comes down to who's going to be throwing the football to these players. If it's Cam Newton, I'm giving the Patriots a D. If it's another quarterback who's much better than Cam Newton, then I'm probably giving it a B+. All
right, so we're probably not intellectual enough in this podcast to start issuing letters. So can we just go from out of 10, marks out of 10 for so far? How are we doing?
If it's Cam Newton, I'm giving this a 3. If it's a quarterback better than Cam Newton, I'm giving this a 7 to an 8, maybe a 7.
Ooh, wow.
7.5, 7.8.
I want you to come back around to this at the end of the season if somehow you all win at least 10 games and make the playoffs because of Cam Newton.
If Cam, listen, what can I do if Cam Newton somehow brings this team to the playoffs? We can come up with that, or you can, nextfanup@gmail.com. What can I do? because I'm telling you right now, it ain't going to happen. I'll put that on the board right now. Cam Newton is not leading the New England Patriots to the playoffs. Definitely not the Super Bowl. All right.
Well, no. Baby steps. Playoffs.
Playoffs? Talking about playoffs?
10 wins or playoffs. I will take either, because you can make look, we saw last year a couple of one team. We almost had the threat of a team winning 10 games and missing the playoffs in the AFC. So it's possible.
Let's move to a team in the NFC, shall we? And a team that features a super fan on the show, because it makes the conversation that much better. The Washington. All
right, Neil.
Washington football team is now up on the block. You have, let's see here, offensive tackle David Sharp, veteran running back Lamar Miller, cornerback William Jackson, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals, quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick ends up in the NFC East. Has he been in the NFC East before?
Ooh,
sure.
No, I think he's played for 3 of the 4 teams in the AFC East.
Right. He hasn't played for the Patriots. This guy named Curtis Samuel, who I would say is probably the biggest name wide receiver off the board to this particular point in time. 3-year, $34.5 million deal. Let's see here. The Washington football team, especially Terry McLaurin, very happy about this, as he mentioned that he and Curtis, as teammates, dreamt about playing in the NFL together on the same team. Warren Sharp mentions that last year, Curtis Samuel ranked 4th in the NFL in third down catches. He converted 51% of third down targets into first downs. Meanwhile, Washington as a team was at 32%, ranking 28th in the NFL. So certainly helping out there. I don't know who Danny Kelly is, at Danny B. Kelly on Twitter, but he mentioned Samuel, Antonio Gibson, and Terry McLaurin is some hot, nasty, badass speed, to which our own Buffalo Rob said, hot, nasty, badass speed is the perfect name for a fantasy team. So there you go.
That's right. It sounds like a good weekend with Rob.
Hot, nasty, badass speed, or with Patrick Chung again. All right.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, quite. So I think the first 2 names you mentioned there, Sharp and Miller, they both got 1-year deals. I think they were with Washington last year, or certainly at the end of last season, so just re-signed. The Curtis Samuel thing. I mean, yeah, he had a reasonable season last year, a couple of 100 yards rushing, 851 yards through the passing. But let's remember, that's the only season he's had where he's topped 1,000 yards from scrimmage in his 4-year career. And let's also be very aware that although he seemed to have his talent tapped last year by the new coaching regime, his first 3 years in the league were with Ron Rivera, where he didn't actually do a whole lot, really. And that you got to question what the hell that coaching staff was doing with him when all of a sudden he has such a reasonable year last year. Do I like Curtis Samuel? No, I don't. I think he's very average. I think he's a really average player. What's he done in his career so far? He's got 4 years, a couple of 1,000 yards receiving, just under 500 yards rushing. He can do a bit of both, but he doesn't. He is an average player. I mean, you were saying, Jay, he's the number 1 receiver that's sort of been taken in free agency, and that just sums up everything in free agency, doesn't it? It's been a poor free agency group for the wide receivers since the guys were tagged, and if he's the best of them, then I don't think you're looking for a wide receiver in this free agency group. He's an average player. There's nothing in his performances to this point that would suggest he's anything other than an average player who can do a little bit of running as well from the backfield if you so desire. I'm happy in the sense that his average play is already better than what's on our offense, other than McLaurin and Gibson. But so it'll improve our team for sure. But let's not get mixed up here. This is not the second coming of Jerry Rice who's arrived on the scene.
All right, no, he's not Jerry Rice, but he's a definite upgrade to your offense, and a solid one that, as I just highlighted with Warren Sharp, will improve your third down conversions, and that's what this game is all about.
Yeah, if we can get somebody to throw the ball,
chains. Well, Ryan Fitzpatrick can throw the ball.
Yep. Also an upgrade. Also an upgrade to the team for sure. How many more wins would we have had if Fitzpatrick had started last year? I'd probably say maybe 1.5, maybe 2 wins more, which would have turned us into a 9-7 team, which is perfectly fine. But I think, like we were talking about with the Patriots, Jay, I think Fitzpatrick's in there as a bridge quarterback, and I guess of all the quarterbacks available, probably the best bridge quarterback available this year. But again, it'll be a case of Washington looking in the draft to try and find the next poor unfortunate soul who's got to don a Washington uniform for the next few years of his career before it ends unceremoniously dumped and sent off to some backup role across the league, shaking and crying his eyes out as he goes.
He's not wrong. I mean, if you look at the last 2-3 quarterbacks drafted by Washington, that's pretty much what's happened to them.
But I don't recall before Ron Rivera. You don't think Ron Rivera is moving this team forward? You don't see the team moving forward? You don't have optimism here, Neil? Because we're gonna get to some super fans who are going to talk about their free agency and their teams, and they don't have optimism.
I'm old enough and ugly enough to know that as a Washington fan, considering even thinking of the term optimism is usually a bad move. I don't recall a single Washington quarterback in the last 30 years who hasn't left the team weeping like a child.
Well, minus Kirk Cousins, because, Minnesota decided to break the bank for him.
That's right. But he was still weeping with us. It wasn't us that stopped him weeping. That was another team.
I mean, I mentioned it last season that you haven't really lost a lot on defense.
No. That's right.
So I still think the defense is underrated for you guys, and I think it's a strength of your team. And you have a quarterback who at times can be Fitzmagic, and other times can be Fitztragic. Mm-hmm. The question is, how often will he be magic versus tragic? And that is always the question with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I'm not sure if Fitzpatrick's had as good a defense behind him as he's going to have in Washington. He may have done that. He's played for a long time, so he's obviously played with a lot of defenses, and there's maybe 1 or 2 really good ones there. And the Miami one last year was okay, but we've got that. And you added the other signing we've made, William Jackson, the cornerback formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. I think, because we lost Darby. Ronald Darby went to Denver, I think, possibly. He left us in free agency, and we've replaced him with Jackson, and I think that's probably an upgrade. Darby had a really good season for us last year, but I think Jackson's better. And I'm looking forward to that signing. I think that just helps solidify what is, as you said, a pretty solid defense.
Are you going to get Ryan Kerrigan back?
I think there's a real hard-nosed decision to be made there. I don't think he played. He certainly didn't play very much. In some games, he hardly played at all last year. But he is a great locker room guy, and he can offer a bit of pass rush. I think it will depend a lot on what we do in the draft. If we can maybe draft a young pass rusher later in the rounds of the draft to develop, then I think it might be the end for Kerrigan. But it's difficult, Jay, because he's been our second best player over the last decade on that team, and he's given everything to the club, so it's hard to wave goodbye to him. But I think Ron hasn't shown that he's unwilling to do such things. So we'll see how that goes. I happily have him back on the squad, but if he leaves, then I trust Ron has made the right decision.
You mentioned we've been talking about Fitzpatrick. He's obviously a bridge quarterback. Who's your quarterback target, or is he already on the team? Is Taylor Heineke the future of the Washington football team?
No, well, we've got Kyle Allen, we've got Taylor Heineke, and we've got Fitzpatrick, and then we have the undrafted free agent from last year, Stephen Montez from Colorado. But I think Washington will probably look more to the second round for a quarterback in the draft, because I don't think at 19 they want to be wasting their draft capital on getting up for one of these guys. It's a lot to give up. You guys are at 15. That'll already be a lot. At 19, even more, because that's the sort of dead part of the first round. Nobody really wants pick 19, so that'll be tough. I think there's a guy called Kyle Trask who's a very big, strong, not that mobile pocket quarterback who will probably go somewhere in the second round. He's a guy they might go after. That would fit Scott Turner's offense quite well, I think. You
love Jamie Newman.
I do love Jamie Newman, but I'm not sure many others do. You'll have Trask, you've got Mond, you'll have Newman, Book, these kind of guys who will go sort of second and then into the third round, maybe even into the fourth round. So I would fully expect to see Washington draft a quarterback either in the second or third round this year.
Let's stay in the NFC, and let's go to the NFC West, where the Arizona Cardinals have made some moves. And before we jump into the players that they've signed, let's hear from our own Cardinals superfan, Dr. Jones, on whom they lost.
Hello there, superfans. This is Dr. Jones, your friendly Arizona Cardinals superfan, giving you a quick recap of the first few days of free agency. And I gotta say, there's some ups, there's some downs, there's some sadness, and there's some optimism. So I guess we'll just start with the people that are no longer with us here, and that's going to be Hassan Reddick. 12.5 sacks last year was a really nice sign for a young player who had really underperformed his first 4 years in the league. I think the Cardinals really valued the fact that Reddick got these opportunities only because multiple pass rushers were injured all year long, and that he really didn't fit into the 3-4 scheme, especially from a run defense perspective as well as we would like. He definitely got mauled in the run game more often than not, especially in San Francisco, especially in Seattle, two teams that really like to get after you physically. Even the Los Angeles Rams had their way with him in many cases. And if you look at most of his sacks, most of them were out of division. There were a couple pop games. He had 5 sacks in New York alone against the Giants. I mean, that was rookie Andrew Thomas just being abused over and over again. So I'm not really too sad about the Hassan Reddick loss. I will tell you that the contract was pretty interesting. I would have loved to have his speed on the defense at, I think it was $6 million a year he got from Carolina. The sadder news is Patrick Peterson has chosen a 1-year, $10 million contract with the Minnesota Vikings. This is kind of funny to me because Patrick Peterson has not been the same player since he was popped for the PED suspension 2 years ago. He's going to a defense that plays mostly zone schemes, and this is a man cover corner who travels. I don't know if it's the best fit. I don't know what Zimmer's thinking. We definitely weren't going to get near $10 million for Patrick Peterson. I could see us offering between 6, 7, maybe $8 million for him. But just the performance is not living up to the name anymore, and it hasn't for two straight years. And you got to remember, all of the special team success he had as well was year one. He hasn't had a punt return touchdown since his rookie year. His turnover percentages are going down. He's being targeted more now. He's allowing more catches now. I'm really fine with Patrick Peterson leaving, especially at that $10 million price range. What that does, though, is really make us thin in the secondary, which I talked about the last time I was on the pod. When you think about being thin in the secondary, you really got to beef up your pass rush. And we talked about J.J. Redick. I'm pretty high on that move. But again, the theme of the Cardinals this year is we've got age and we've got injury history. So we've got to hope that J.J. Watt stays healthy. We're going to have Marcus Golden, who's coming back. But the last time he was a Cardinal, he got hurt, tore his ACL, left to New York, put up 10 sacks, now is back. He gets great pressure on the quarterback, but he's just not fast enough to bring him down a lot of the time. He's got one of the top pressure rates in the entire NFL. So I really like Marcus Golden being re-signed, and for 2 years at a really low price, that gives us the flexibility in year 2 to maybe extend him or figure out what we're going to do there. So our pass rush should be pretty fierce when you look at it on paper, as long as they stay healthy. And that should make up for what is going to be probably a very young secondary when all's said and done. Moving over to the offensive side of the ball, we signed A.J. Green. A.J. Green is a nice free agent signing. I'm not really, again, sure about 1 year, $8 million. It's a big number, $8 million. I think that's with incentives, though. I think we're going to be somewhere around $6 million if he does what I think he's going to do productionally. Last year, we're talking about a guy that caught 50 balls. I'm really not too high on the A.J. Green signing, other than the fact we've got someone to complement DeAndre Hopkins on the right side of the field. We've still got a lot of issues with our wide receiver room. Larry Fitzgerald, for the first time in a long time, still hasn't told us if he's coming back. I think this is the first time he's been a free agent. He's taking longer this year than he ever has before. The hope is that Larry comes back on a very cheap deal. We definitely can't re-sign him for $11 million like we have been for the last few years. I was actually thinking, if Larry wants to respect the franchise, come back, stay with the team, pair up with Nuke, pair up with AJ Green, wouldn't a $1.1 million contract for 1 year make sense for number 11? It makes sense to me. Let's see if that's something Larry can get done with the team. Hopefully we see him back. I'd hate for the legend to go out with a very empty stadium. I'd like to see stadiums packed to give Larry the send-off he deserves when he finally does decide to hang them up. Finally, the biggest move of the free agency period so far for the Cardinals, we traded a third-round pick to the Las Vegas Raiders for Rodney Hudson. We traded them a third-round pick, and we got back a seventh-round pick, and we picked up what might be one of the top three centers in the entire NFL for a very good contract, with a very good contract. Rodney Hudson's making under $10 million a year this year, and he's locked in at under $11 million next year. We're talking about a multi-time captain for the Las Vegas Raiders. We're talking about a multi-time Pro Bowler, and I think he even was second-team All-Pro a couple years ago. He's one of the top centers in the league, easily one of the best pass-blocking centers in the league. And if you look at the Cardinals' offensive line the last couple of years, what you notice is a funnel straight to Kyler Murray from up the middle. Mason Cole, Lamont Gilliard, all of the centers we've had for the last couple of years have just basically not been good enough. Our guard play is somewhat passable. We've got Pugh on the left, and I think we're going to be putting Josh Jones on the right, or maybe we're going to do some more work there at right guard. Kelvin Beachum and Marcus Gilbert are going to be at right tackle, and then Pro Bowler DJ Humphries out on left tackle. So I feel pretty good about our offensive line right now with Rodney Hudson anchoring the middle. Still a long way to go. I think we still have the opportunity to restructure Chandler Jones's deal, maybe extend him a couple more years because this is the last year on his current deal. If we can restructure Chandler, there's a good opportunity to move a lot of that to signing bonus and free up some more cap space. We've got to get corners in the desert. I'd really like to see another wide receiver as well. The Curtis Samuel hiring in Washington really stabbed me hard in the heart because that Curtis Samuel deal, I would have loved for that to have come to the Cardinals and not get A.J. Green at all. We need speed. I'm looking straight at you, Will Fuller. I don't know if you've been talking to Nuke. I don't know if you've been talking to David Johnson leaving about how the Cardinals were, but Will Fuller, you would look great in the Cardinals uniform. I think we could use another cornerback. I'm looking at Adoree Jackson, who was released from Tennessee. I think that would be a nice fit. I'm honestly fine, too, trading a pick for Kyle Fuller. It sounds like Kyle Fuller in Chicago might be on tenuous ground there with his contract for this year, so there might be an opportunity to make another trade like we did with the Raiders. Steve Keim's sweet spot is not drafting. It's absolutely not signing free agents. When we trade picks for good players, we tend to have very good success doing that. So Steve Keim needs to stick to what he does best and maybe call Chicago and see if Kyle Fuller really is someone we could go get. If not, maybe a second-round pick for Stephon Gilmore would be what the Patriots need to pull away Stephon Gilmore from the Pats. That would be another nice one to go talk to. So I'm somewhat encouraged by some of the signings. I'm meh on some others. I'm sad about Patrick Peterson leaving the team, and I'm hopeful that Larry Fitzgerald will give us at least one more year here in Arizona before he hangs it up, because I think we really want to give him the send-off he deserves. That's all I've got. I'll send it back to the guys in the studio. Thanks. Dr. Jones out.
Dr. Jones gave us a real good breakdown there. First of all, Dr. Jones, it's going to take more than a second round draft choice to get Stephon Gilmore from the New England Patriots. I'll tell you that right now. And if it only takes a second, then I'm going to be very, very angry. I'll be at -5 on your scale there, Neil.
You never asked me for what my score was with the Washington deal.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to give a score for Washington before I continue here?
Yeah, go on. I'll give it a 6.
Okay. Well, it's better than 5, which is better than average.
Yep.
Dr. Jones also a little upset losing Hassan Reddick, but still time to build the roster, and mentions that the Cardinals have had success trading draft capital for proven players, and that's why I bring up the Stephon Gilmore here. He also mentioned reaching out to the Bears to get Kendall Fuller away from the Bears to help in the secondary. The Cardinals, as you heard, Dr. Jones, I mean, Marcus Golden, AJ Green, Kelvin Beachum, Rodney Hudson in a trade. Also important to note here, a kicker, Matt Prater, signing with the Cardinals. Warren Sharp at Sharp Football on Twitter mentions that the Cardinals aggressively trying to win in Kyler Murray's rookie deal window the last 12 months. Here's what they've added: center Rodney Hudson, wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, defensive end J.J. Watt, wide receiver A.J. Green, defensive end Jordan Phillips, linebacker Devin Kennard, linebacker Devondre Campbell, and they re-signed defensive back Budda Baker and offensive tackle DJ Humphries to go along with all those other signings that we've mentioned. Neil, you think they're getting too old, though?
Well, isn't Arizona the place that people go to retire?
No, that's true.
Generally in life.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of seeing that mirrored in the team there. How many of these guys are you buying them for their name as opposed to their current ability? AJ Green, oof. I mean, wow, I've been a great fan of AJ Green over the years. What a player! But man, it's hard to say he doesn't look done.
It's a 1-year deal worth up to $8.5 million. That's
but
more
more
important for an AJ Green.
It is, but more importantly, it's a roster spot that you could fit a young, developing wide receiver who's got a long career ahead of him on your team. It seems
Christian
a bit,
Kirk.
It does seem a little bit like it's win now. Would that be fair?
I think that's fair.
Win now before the Smurf gets squashed.
Well, and then you have his Smurf wide receiver target Andy Isabella, and there's a certain Fitz on this team, Larry Fitzgerald, who has not yet formally retired. So as of right now, Larry Fitzgerald is still an Arizona Cardinal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, is this are they going to be vastly improved? You know, losing Hassan Reddick and then the guys that brought in.
My concern would be two positions with the squad with a ton of people who are available, and that is tight end and corner. Daniels and Arnold performed well at tight end for them last year as a tandem. Both are available in free agency. They haven't made any moves to bring them back as of yet. And at cornerback, you're looking at Drake Kirkpatrick. Patrick Peterson is a question mark as far as whether he'll be back or not.
Patrick Peterson has been signed with the Vikings.
Well, excuse me. So they've lost Patrick Peterson. And Jonathan Joseph, another cornerback on the squad. So they've got some big voices. I'm not going to automatically say, this makes them vastly better until the rest of the squad is rounded out at those two key positions. Yes, they've done some significant things to help the team overall, but nothing really to slam the door and say they're done. I mean, I get it. This is still the first week of free agency, so there's still a lot more to be done between now and training camp. But, I mean, if I'm a Cardinals fan, I'm optimistic up until I see, again, cornerback and tight end.
By the way, Larry Fitzgerald is a free agent. He is not currently an Arizona Cardinal.
He might retire.
He may. Or he might sign somewhere for a 1-year deal like AJ Green did.
I'm just struggling to look at the guys they've lost, the guys they've signed. Does it move the needle in terms of wins? And I'm not convinced at this point it does. Now things, of course, may change. They might have a draft where they get one or two really good players, but I just don't see it.
I'm on board with James. They have a really big hole in their secondary. Tight ends, I would think they can get Dan Arnold back. Right now, they have two tight ends under contract, but the one that's of importance is Max Williams, the guy who always could be Max Williams.
I mean, they could. You can imagine the Cardinals going out and trying to get your boy Zach Ertz, James, another old guy to line up in that offense.
It's possible. I don't know if that's one of his destinations.
That is the most sensible answer you've given for a long time on this podcast, I have to say.
Wow, really?
All right, let's move on to another team also in the NFC. Wow, I'm NFC centric today. What do you know? Let's go to the Chicago Bears, where Chicago Tom is standing by with these thoughts.
This is Tom, your Bears rep. The Bears signed Andy Dalton to a one-year, $10 million contract yesterday, presumably to be their starting quarterback in 2021. I've always considered myself to be a Bears observer with realistic expectations for what the Bears were going to do at the quarterback position. People who know me know what my thoughts were on the matter. But I have to say that of the list of possibilities that the Bears had, Andy Dalton was at the very bottom of the list. He's 33 years old. We know who he is. The odds that he's going to do better with the Bears next year than he did with the Cowboys last year, surrounded by more better talent, are very, very low. And I see very little possibility that anything good is going to come of this. Certainly the team has not improved itself at all. Now, there were other possibilities here on this. I never thought that it was even remotely possible that they would be able to trade for Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson. Seattle is not going to take a $39 million cap hit to trade Russell Wilson. It just wasn't going to happen. Jacoby Brissett, though, signed on the very same day that the Bears presumably agreed to sign Dalton for less money. He's 28 years old, and yeah, he's not all that good, but there's still the possibility that he could land with the Bears in a different situation and the light could come on and he could be better. So at least there's some possibility there. I mean, it's not a great possibility, but there's some. Ryan Fitzpatrick's 39. We know who he is, but he basically carried the Dolphins the last 2 years. So he was a realistic possibility that would have been much better in my mind than Andy Dalton. So there were other, directions that they could have gone here. They could have traded for someone. Gardner Minshew wouldn't have cost that much. So I have to say, I'm disappointed. And, I read just this morning a column from a very reliable and respected columnist for the Chicago Tribune, where he basically suggested, and I think rightfully so, that the Bears aren't going to draft a quarterback because Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy need to win this year, and they can't spend a pick on somebody that's not going to help them this year. So I have a question for you guys. Fans of the 31 teams that didn't win the Super Bowl basically live on hope. And if you've got Andy Dalton as your quarterback in 2021 and you're not drafting anybody, what hope is there? I'll hang up and listen for your answer.
Tom wants to know, where is the optimism? Where is the hope with Andy Dalton under center? I will just add what Tom did not say. Adam Schefter reported that Chicago made, quote, a very aggressive pursuit of Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson per sources, and the Bears were told that Seattle is not trading him at this time. The Bears were one of 4 teams Wilson's agent named as a place of interest. Now Chicago has an agreement with Andy Dalton. They also added Jermaine Iafetti to their offensive line, and safety Deion Bush is returning to the Chicago Bears on a 1-year deal to round out the Bears' moves. By the way, we didn't rank the Cardinals again, and I don't know if we'll rank the Bears, but these are things that you should be more on top of, Neil.
So I'd give the Cardinals a 4.
I think
But
the
I've got to
Cardinals
ask-
are at a. I think the Cardinals are at a 6.
But I would have to say, come on, somebody tell me what the hell are the Bears doing?
There's an argument to be made, plus and minus, for Andy Dalton, and trust me, I'm struggling to come up with the plus. But and I think really my biggest issue with them signing Andy Dalton is why didn't you just keep Mitch Trubisky? It's the exact same quarterback, is he not?
Trubisky and Foles, isn't it the same thing?
Well, and you still have Foles on the roster.
Right. All the same quarterback, and you get more time with Trubisky to actually find a decent option.
What's Trubisky's status?
He's a free agent.
Patriots, just saying, Jay. Patriots.
I don't think he wants Trubisky.
That does not increase. That is not a better quarterback than Cam Newton. Does not get me up to a 7.5 on New England. The Bears still have the Allen Robinson. I think has said is not going to sign his tender. Allen Robinson wants out of Chicago, and I've also seen reports that the Bears are taking trade requests for Anthony Miller, who is their current starting slot receiver, which leaves them only with Darnell Mooney, who came on strong, especially towards the end of the season. Riley Ridley, brother to Calvin, who's, in the words of Neil, okay. Definitely not Calvin Ridley. I don't know. Can we give Tom any glimmer of hope? I mean, Andy Dalton did he get to the playoffs?
But what I don't understand,
yes, but he never won a game.
What I don't understand is how a team goes from making a massive bid for Russell Wilson, as we're led to believe they have done, to going from there to then deciding that the answer, well, after all that, the answer is Andy Dalton. I mean, only a team who should be saying, well, okay, all those picks and that we wanted to give up, let's try and get up in the draft for one of these young quarterbacks and give our fan base some hope. Maybe that's what they'll do, but it just seems like extraordinarily, from one end of the spectrum to the other in terms of this quarterback situation. And no, I can't give the Chicago Bears team hope because, like my team, until they get a serviceable quarterback who is in the upper tiers of the league, then they're going nowhere fast.
Unfortunately, Chicago is one of those teams historically that has struggled at fixing one position, and this just happens to be it, which is why we mock them every year for whoever plays his position. We've never heaped any amount of praise on quarterback in Chicago in the same sentence, especially not in the last 30 or 40 years. I mean, yeah, Jim McMahon was a quarterback of their team that won a Super Bowl, but he still wasn't one of the top tier guys in the league that you'd say.
But he was great. I love him.
He had 1 year with Jay Cutler, right?
Who?
Yeah. 1 year. 1 year of good Jay Cutler.
I'm sorry. What happened in that 1 year with Jay Cutler?
I don't know. I'm just saying. Didn't Jay Cutler have one good year in Chicago?
If you're speaking of that 1 good year where they went to the NFC title game that they hosted, lost to Green Bay, where he got, and I don't want to disparage his injury, but he looked displacent after getting hurt in the first half and didn't do anything to help his backup acclimate to the game or the game plan in the second half, then sure, that's a good year.
I take it Cutler wasn't the quarterback when they went to the Super Bowl, was he?
No.
No, I can't remember think who that was, but
Rex Grossman.
Oh, Rex Grossman, of course. Yeah, that's right. But I kind of look at it and think, well, you can see exactly, James, you're talking about a team struggling to have a quarterback for 30 years or so. That's exactly why you'd find it crazy for the Texans to give a Watson up or the Seahawks to give up Wilson. I mean, franchise quarterbacks are so rare in the league that you just can't think five number one picks would be enough. I don't think people appreciate how rare it is until you support a team who just never had a franchise quarterback like mine. It's just you just can't get them. You just can't get them.
So if we're grading
Your
the
team has
Bears,
had franchise quarterbacks.
if we're going to grade the Bears here, are you going to knock them down because of the Russell Wilson report, or does that not come into effect here on your grade?
It definitely does, because it tells me that it looks like a team who doesn't have a plan. And so I would put them down. I would say what they've done so far and what I've heard that they didn't do, I would put them down at a 2.
I'm a kind grader. I'm going to give them a 3.
Oh,
that wasn't me being kind.
Jay, really? This is odd. On a team that's not New England?
Listen, I can be nice. There's a time to be nice. There's time not to be nice. Let's go.
Nice?
Let's go back to the AFC. And speaking of Mike Vrabel, that was hours ago. We will talk about the Tennessee Titans. And here is our Tennessee Titans superfan, Jordan, who has a lot of sadness.
We were told it was going to be a bloodbath. We were told it was going to be a massacre in free agency this season. Look no further than what happened with the Tennessee Titans. We cut Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler, Adam Humphries, and Dennis Kelly. So that's 3 out of our top 5 leaders in targets between Davis, Humphries, and Jonnu. It's 3 out of 5 of our secondary. I didn't even mention Kenny Vaccaro, Malcolm Butler, Adoree Jackson, 2 corners, and a starting safety that we lost. We cut Dennis Kelly, who was our starting right tackle for their whole season. So I don't know, maybe we just don't believe the passing game exists anymore, that we're getting rid of all these receivers, all these corners. We also signed quite a few people. We signed Danico Autry from the Colts. We signed Bud Dupree, Janoris Jenkins. We signed Kendall Lamb, a random offensive lineman. So the one thing I do like is I did want to reallocate our resources on defense to go from spending all this money on the secondary to spending it more up front with some edge rushers, some defensive line. I think it's a better way to construct your team. Just look at teams that have made it to the Super Bowl recently on defense. You've got to have that powerful front group. But we've got a lot of work to do. It's like that meme, like, what'd you do to get a pass rush? What'd you have to give up? We had to give up everything. So maybe we have a pass rush now, but now we're missing some corners, even with Janoris Jenkins. We're missing a lot of receivers. We basically have A.J. Brown and a bunch of practice squad guys right now. So I think we still have more moves in the works here. I'm hoping maybe we'll be in the Will Fuller sweepstakes, or else we'll probably draft a receiver. I think it's too early to judge because I have no idea what other moves are coming, but I mean, this is crazy. The Titans team is going to look so different. I mean, yes, we'll have Tannehill, Henry, and A.J. Brown. That's kind of the core, but our defense is so much turnover, and all of our role players on offense, just so much turnover. So yeah, I mean, I usually like to think I can come on here and say something intelligent about my team, but right now I honestly have no idea where we're going with this, and you have to basically just hope that more moves are coming, because at this point we've saved so much in cap space that I would hope we're only making these cuts if we're planning on doing something with that money. It has been an absolute bloodbath in the Titans secondary and the Titans receiver core. Everybody's gone. So, stay tuned what's going to happen next, and I'll throw it back to you, Pod.
All right, so Jordan, very upset with all the cuts that they've made. And quite honestly, you look at what's left on the roster currently of the Tennessee Titans, and there's not much left in some key spots, especially at wide receiver. Now, they did sign cornerback Janoris Jenkins. They got linebacker Bud Dupree and defensive tackle or defensive end, defensive lineman, we'll say, Danico Autry. What do we think so far of the Titans?
I am concerned that they look, I understand that, between Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, we knew one of them wasn't going to be back, but to see neither of them return, that's a bit disconcerting. Those are pretty much your top 2 targets from your offense last year. And yeah, they need help.
No, they still got Anthony Firkser at tight end. I mean, he's a great tight end, Anthony Firkser. It's got a great name. Ferkser. Star in the making.
Done?
No?
You done? Because that sounds like a dad joke. Yeah, they have to be in the market for one of these wide receivers. From what I'm seeing through all the chatters, Juju Smith-Schuster is probably one of their targets, but who knows what that is going to amount to dollar-wise. Maybe they get somebody out the draft, but I don't think they're high enough to get one of the top 5 receivers available, let alone the top 3 in the draft. Defensively, cool. They got a pass rusher. They still need another one.
Neil, you've been down on the wide receivers. Which of the wide receivers is the best one and the best fit here for Tennessee to target? Is it Kenny Golladay? Is it Juju? Is it somebody else?
Oh, I reckon Golladay is probably the guy with the most upside, surely. Even though he's had a bit of a checkered career injury-wise. I'm not a fan of Juju Smith-Schuster. I think he's a number 2, number 3 wide receiver. I don't think he's all that. I know he's a good guy and appears to be a good guy in the locker room and so. But nah, Jay, it's tough, isn't it? To if that's your 2 choices, who do you go for? I mean, what do they want? Do they want a guy more to play in the slot, or do they want a guy who can stretch the defense a little bit?
Well, if you're looking for a stretch guy, what about Will Fuller?
Yeah, Will Fuller is a decent wide receiver.
I mean, let's not forget that they still have AJ Brown, who had a career year last year.
Yeah, a terrific receiver. Yeah, terrific.
And you can put Juju opposite of him. That would be fine. I mean, you say Juju's not a number 1. Put him opposite of AJ Brown. Let him, let this duo, torch the league basically. But I still think they need a tight end.
Well, I mean, the biggest need for me, and it has been for a couple of years, and I don't know if Jordan mentions that or not, but it's pass rush. That's what's hindered them in the last couple of years. They've just been able to not be able to generate any pass rush at all, and that's been tough for them.
So Bud Dupree doesn't fix that for you?
Remember, Dupree is coming off a knee injury.
Yeah,
so
I'm not sure.
I don't expect immediate impact when the season starts.
I mean, he hasn't signed for them, has he?
Yeah.
Bud Dupree signed for the Tennessee Titans.
Yes, he did.
Right. Well, no, I don't rate him either. He's okay. He's okay, but he's played opposite. Always beware of the guy who's played opposite a star player. I always, as one of my sayings, of course, Jay, as you know, and he's played opposite TJ, hasn't he, for a couple of years? So let's see how he plays when the other guy on the other side of him is a worse pass rusher than he is.
I love those sayings that you've always been known to be saying.
That's right, yeah. At least I'm a legend in my living room, I tell you that much.
I got another team. This was one of the most, as we graded all the most interesting off seasons in our last episode, this was a team that was up there because they had the most cap space, the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, I don't think they've made, all of these signings that I'm about to say, none of them are really impact signings to me. Wide receivers, Marvin Jones and Philip Dorsett. You have cornerback Shaquille Griffin, a 3-year, $44.5 million deal that includes $29 million guaranteed. Tight end Chris Manhertz, to address the tight end position, talk about a name. And running back Carlos Hyde, the ageless wonder Carlos Hyde, signing as a running back with the Jaguars. I guess that means Mike Davis won't be coming back. I'm sorry, Mike Davis is the Carolina Panthers. My bad. What do we think about what Jacksonville has done, knowing that Trevor Lawrence, let's just assume and write it in pen, Trevor Lawrence is your starting quarterback?
Well, you also missed Shaquille Griffin at corner. Was probably their big splash.
Come on, James, pay attention.
I mentioned that. Thanks, James.
Yeah, come on, James. Jeez. God, you're sleeping on the job, and that's something you've struggled to do recently, I believe. What I would say about the Jaguar, it's very similar in a way to what the Patriots have done. They're filling out a roster that obviously for the Jaguars was much worse than the Patriots, but filling out that roster with serviceable veteran guys who can give you something for the next year or so while they restyle that entire roster. But obviously, like you said, Jay, there's nothing that's inspiring me. There's nobody come into Jacksonville so far that you can say, wow, that guy is going to help them get more wins. So maybe overall there'll be 1 or 2 wins better, but for them it's all about preparing for the draft, isn't it? Get that offensive line sorted. That's what they need to do, because Trevor Lawrence can't help you when he's lying flat on his back.
Well, your current offensive line is Cam Robinson, Andrew Norwell, Brandon Linder, AJ Khan, and Jawan Taylor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they gave Cam Robinson a nice fat deal.
Yep, they did. Jawan Taylor this will be his 3rd year in the league now, so we'll see how that goes, but that's going to be the key for them. They've got to get that offense in gear. They've got to get some playmakers, because DJ Chark didn't they trade him away?
No, DJ Chark is still there.
DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault are still there on the squad. Yep. I look at Jones and Dorsett as nice veteran guys to groom those two. Provide solid depth. Same thing with Carlos Hyde behind James Robinson. So, I mean, yeah, you've got solid depth now at your skill positions. Like you said, Neil, they need to solidify that O-line because, again, the rookie's first year, pretty much almost half the time is spent picking himself off the turf.
If you are the Jaguars, if you're the Chicago Bears, are you calling Jacksonville and saying, what do I need to get Gardner Minshew off your hands?
Oh, see. All right. Oh, geez. Come on. We've beaten the Bears up enough without slamming them again.
I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. There hasn't been a lot of talk about Gardner Minshew has been a starting quarterback for 2 years. Now.
Yeah, he shouldn't have been.
In name only.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I don't necessarily believe that. I think Gardner Minshew has some potential. I don't think he's the second coming of Tom Brady, but I do think that, well, I do think he's a better quarterback than Cam Newton.
The only part of Gardner Minshew that's Hall of Fame worthy is his mustache.
What about his banana hammock?
I'll leave that to you and James. That's your area of expertise.
Fair enough. Speaking of James here, we are at the Philadelphia Eagles.
Good. We already talked to him, Texas James. We're good.
At Field Yates, the Eagles have released Alshon Jeffrey and Malik Jackson. Still, according to you, still playing creative accounting with the cap. Ertz still working on a trade destination, waiting on the draft. Though one of these wide receivers available couldn't hurt. Which of the wide receivers would you like?
Name any of them, but again, they'll cost too much money, and we've already done creative accounting with the cap. The 2 players that were released today, I pretty much called at the end of the season. One of which I said desperately needed to go a year ago, but we're still manipulating the cap just to get space because of the rookie class we plan on signing. Look, need is receiver, linebacker, and secondary, and I don't think we fix all 3 of those things in the draft. So if we're not signing a wide receiver, then our first pick at number 6 is going to be one of the top 3 receivers in the draft, depending on who's left at that point. And maybe we get somebody on defense to help. Probably won't be a big splash name, but it may be one of those things where we're waiting to the second round of free agency after the draft to pick up a veteran that gets cut. As of right now, this is the best thing the Eagles can do, is continue to manipulate the cap so that they're under it by time the second free agency signing period rolls around. But,
so I'm on Pro Football Focus, which is always dangerous. Deshaun Jackson currently ranked 166. Just using that as a point of reference for you, not to drum up any bad memories for you, but just as a point of reference. 2 guys right ahead of him that I think could fall into your lap as cheaper options. That, again, these aren't guys, Neil, that are necessarily going to go, wow, they definitely are great. But there are guys that I think will improve the Philadelphia Eagles. David Moore, and Josh Reynolds?
No.
We're at the stage, Jay. We're at the
Compared
stage
to
where
what we have right now, that's not really an upgrade.
All right.
Like we have a good supporting cast of wide receivers. We need a guy to draw attention so the rest of these guys can do their jobs. Because look, these aren't world beaters at wide receiver, but they are at worst serviceable and at best average. So you're talking about a Jalen Reagor who has only had 1 year in the league, a Greg Ward who basically was the only option at wide receiver during our last trip to the playoffs, and a Travis Fulgham who's never been allowed to reach his potential. So those are our top 3 targets right now. Behind that, not really intimidating or any hope with Kez Watkins, John Hightower, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. The latter of the two haven't even scratched what they were supposed to be coming out of college. So, yeah, we need a guy. And I don't care if that guy is a bona fide number 1 or number 2 pretending to be a number 1 in name only. But if we get a guy, the other 3 receivers I named, Reagor, Ward, and Fulgham, can do their jobs effectively enough to get this offense moving up and down the field.
How does T.Y. Hilton treat you?
I mean, he's good for a year or 2, but I've got concerns of 1, his age, and 2, his health.
Well, I'm thinking if you're talking about a guy who hasn't reached his full potential, if you brought in T.Y. Hilton for a year, I think that could help you out for sure.
Yeah, but again, I still think our number 6 pick is going to be wide receiver, which is possibly why we don't sign one of these guys, one of these A guys in free agency at wide receiver.
Yeah, because you're guaranteed one of the big 3.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's put it this way. At number 6, in a normal world, yes, we're guaranteed one of the big 3. I mean, last year, we were all but guaranteed Justin Jefferson, and we drafted Jalen Reagor. So it all depends on what the front office decides to do. Because if we draft, let's put it this way, if one of those big 3 wide receivers is available at number 6, and consensus says at least one of them will be, and we don't draft him, yeah, Howie Roseman should pretty much put his house up for sale.
What if you took Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't see how Kyle Pitts, like, okay, he's what, the best tight end in the draft, Neil?
Without any, quite possibly the best player other than Penei Sewell in the draft.
So while I'm not against Kyle Pitts, we never seem to have a problem drafting tight ends who, at worst are on the cusp of greatness in any way, shape, or form, whether that be pro level or longtime starter for this team. We never have problem drafting tight ends. The problem is getting a bona fide wide receiver out of the draft. And honestly, we haven't done that well, with the exceptional blip of Deshaun Jackson doing his first tenure in Philadelphia, and who was his running mate opposite? I'm drawing a blank. Jeremy Maclin. So aside from those 2 over the last 30 years, we haven't done well picking this position.
We've danced around this topic long enough. Let's bring it up right now, and that's the wide receiver market. Diana Rossini at Diana ESPN tweeted out, wide receiver Kenny Golladay has received an offer from the Cincinnati Bengals. Per sources, I'm told no decision has been made, while other teams are interested, and one of those teams is the New York Giants. And Dan Graziano at ESPN reports that the receiver will be visiting with New York. Warren Sharp throws in, one of the best years we've ever seen to be a team that wants a wide receiver in free agency and was patient enough to wait on the market. Some solid wide receivers already have and will continue to sign for only 1 year at very team-friendly money. Because Diana Rossini, again, said, just spoke with a GM who is in the market for a wide receiver. I asked him why so many of these good receivers are still on the market. He explained that many of these wide receivers are asking for double-digit money, and it seems not a lot of teams are biting, including his own. Warren Sharp coming back in again, highest average salary for wide receivers in the last 10 years of free agency. Deals of 3+ years. Sammy Watkins in 2018, $16 million. Allen Robinson, 2018, $14 million. Corey Davis with the Jets in 2021, $12.5 million. Mike Wallace with Miami in 2013, $12 million. Curtis Samuel with Washington in 2021, $11.5 million. Deshaun Jackson in Tampa Bay in 2017 at $11.2 million. Maybe other than Allen Robinson, all of these guys have in common is they did nothing for these teams.
Yep.
I think there's a market correction going on here, Neil. I mean, you mentioned it, and it was sort of hinted at here in some of these tweets. These aren't the greatest wide receivers on the face of the earth. And last year was one of the greatest wide receiver classes, or was touted as a deep wide receiver class. This year is touted as a deep wide receiver class in the draft. I think there's a little bit of a market correction going on at wide receiver. Maybe not akin to what happened at running back, but maybe it's getting in that direction.
Yeah, I think also playing into that situation, Jay, is perhaps the change with the passing game in the NFL, which is maybe a little bit more friendly for wide receivers to do well, because the defensive backs can't hit them as like they used to do, and you can probably see teams where 75% of the snaps have got at least 3 wide receivers on the field, so there's more positions available. It's not the old 2 wide receivers that we saw all those years ago, but so there's more opportunities, and there's just lots of guys out there who can play college football when you're seeing those offenses across the NFL now. So I think things are easier to get. What would you say? A sort of lower quality wide receiver can do a lot more in the NFL now than he could do 20, 30 years ago. And there's just not it's a bit like remember when running backs all of a sudden became 10 a penny? It's almost getting to that sort of stage with wide receivers around the league. And of course, the whole emphasis on the passing game means that when you're coming into college, I guess a lot of guys are saying, well, I'd like to be a receiver. I've got a great chance of getting a career in the NFL, going to get a good career and getting the ball thrown to me 10 times a game. It's all very attractive. So all those things combined means that the wide receiver position is stacked with guys. And if you're getting 30 or 40 wide receivers coming out in a draft every year, teams are happy just to mix and match those guys.
Yeah, I have to agree with Neil here. I mean, and not to take anything away from this free agency class, but I mean, if you can find comparable guys like this draft class coming out, especially over this last 3 years of what we had come into the league, you'd be patient enough to wait. You don't need to sign any of the top tier guys unless, a guaranteed person that's going to put you over the top to win the Super Bowl. And we've had this discussion on the show before. How many of the best wide receivers year in and year out, 1, make the playoffs and 2, win championships?
Exactly. Yeah.
These were your top 10 receivers last year in yards per game. Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Travis Kelce, who's tight end, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, and sitting here at number 10 is current free agent Will Fuller. Are we underestimating Will Fuller, or are we taking into the account that Will Fuller was made of glass and then was suspended for PED use?
That certainly will play into it for sure. Why bring in a guy who is often injured and has those off-field problems when you can draft a couple of guys in the 4th round who can probably give you a bit of production. Obviously, you're always going to have the guys who are the superior elite talents. You get that at every position, but teams can go to the 3rd, 4th round now and pick up really good players. Look at what the Steelers have done all these years, picking up these lower round wide receivers and turning them into stars. It's there's just too many cheap wide receivers about, Jay, to warrant paying this massive amount of money for the wide receiver. What's interesting, I think wide receiver is now the 2nd highest tag amount, isn't it?
You might be right.
I think that's right. And that was going to drop like a stone over the coming years, I guess. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, I certainly would I have taken Curtis Samuel in my team, or would I have drafted somebody in the third round, second round? I probably would have gone for the draft pick.
By the way, yards per game was the stat that I just listed the top 10 on. Will Fuller at number 10, only 79.9 yards per game.
Yeah.
Well, it's a changed game, Jay, and you can understand wide receivers are frustrated, but they're just not going to get the money now. It's just not going to happen.
I'm trying to find.
Not to mention the cap dropping the way it did this year, instead of going up, considering what's going on in the world.
Yep. And what did we learn in the Super Bowl? We learned that, by the way, the offensive line and the defensive lines are still what carries this game.
Most important. Yeah.
So, Neil, just to give you a little bit more perception on Curtis Samuel, maybe give you a little more hope, because I was a big Curtis Samuel believer. I wanted Curtis Samuel on the New England Patriots. His catch percentage was 22nd in the league at 79.4%. This catch percentage stat, though, number one was Jonathan Taylor, running back, with 39 targets. Curtis Samuel had 97 targets, so he catches everything that's thrown to him. Well, almost everything. It's 79.4% of everything.
Okay. Well, I feel much better after that, Jay.
Well, I mean, in regards to wide receivers that are listed here, I would say probably the next best in terms of percentage and targets is Alvin Kamara, who had 107 targets and caught 77.6%. Devontae Adams at 31, 149 targets, 77.2% catch percentage. I want a wide receiver that can catch the ball, which, by the way, is not Nelson Aguilar. I don't see him. Let's see. Is he in the top 50? Nope. No Nelson Aguilar here.
Where's N'Keal Harry?
Yeah, he's nowhere to be seen either. All right, just a quick run through here. As I quickly run through, the Falcons have made a trade to acquire tight end Lee Smith from the Bills. The Bills have made a few signings. Ravens, the Panthers, by the way, silently have done a little bit of improving on their team, which I'm a little surprised at, but we'll save that for the weekend. The Browns and Cowboys have made a couple of signings. The Cowboys, the Cowboys were one of those teams over the cap that have suddenly found some cap space to make some moves, which I thought was rather interesting. The Packers' biggest move is probably just bringing Aaron Jones back to the team. 4-year deal worth $48 million and a $13 million signing bonus. I feel like Aaron Jones could have done better. No?
No, I think he's got his money and he's staying with the team he wants to be at. That's probably a pretty good overall deal. I don't know how if we're going to get to this or not, but I think the one team that's been a real sort of surprise and one of the biggest stories in free agency so far has been the Las Vegas Raiders, who have decided that offensive line is not so important in the league.
I have not mentioned a lot about the Raiders. I have a feeling that Monty, our pretend Raider superfan, will be on the weekend show. So I would stay tuned for his thoughts on this. But you're right. They now have jettisoned Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, and Trent Brown from their offensive line. Now, Monty was one that mentioned to us that if we thought that, they've lost 3 of their starters, well, these 3 guys didn't play together all of last year. So there's that. But at the same time, what is left of the offensive line in Las Vegas?
And what I would really like to see here is the Seattle Seahawks saying, "Okay, Russell Wilson, you want offensive line? We're just about to trade you to the Raiders."
That would be cruel. That would be really, really cruel.
But fitting.
But the comical moment will happen at some point during the season when Carr is sacked like 6 times and harassed another 18. And Gruden gets up in a press conference and talks about how we need to get an offensive line that can block.
It's hard to find offensive linemen that can block. It's difficult.
Mm.
One other signing I want to mention here: the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are re-signing kicker Ryan Suckup to a 3-year deal worth $12 million with $6.25 million guaranteed. He gets $8.25 million over the first 2 years. Good job, kicker. Get that money, man.
Tampa Bay have done an outstanding job, haven't they, of keeping the guys they wanted to keep. They franchised their wide receiver. They managed to re-sign their pass rusher, and of course they've extended their quarterback. So, I mean, things looking pretty good again. A good job there by the Bucs, no?
They brought back Rob Gronkowski too.
Also, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the Bucs. I asked this question last week: will the Bucs have enough in place, or do they need to do more? And it appears they're content with the team that they currently have, not necessarily looking for others to improve.
No, and they can. They'll come in and add somebody with their first round pick, and who will be a talented player. So they'll add a little bit there. But they look pretty well set. That offensive line of theirs. I mean, going back to the offensive line, that has kind of stayed intact. So I don't know, James. That looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, look, they're trying to run it back, as we say. So they're keeping all the key pieces that got them on their run last year, especially down the stretch. Yeah. They've restructured a lot of deals of players who were still under contract, and I'm pretty sure they're not done restructuring because maybe there's another one or two players who are currently dangling out there in free agency from the Super Bowl squad they want to bring back, whether it's Fournette or Sue, maybe Brown, but they're still playing creative cap management right now and trying to restructure money and extend guys so they can, bring back some other players to do it again.
Yeah, I think Antonio Brown is an absolute certainty to be on that roster. Well, of course, unless he has some sort of creative summer like he's done in the past, he'll be on that roster. And you can look at that, and he'll be a cheap get because of his off-field problems. He'll play for whatever. Gronkowski will be the same. They'll sort of store him and wrap him in cotton wool and roll him out in the playoffs. They've got Wirfs there, an offensive lineman, on a rookie deal. It's pretty good going. Pretty good going for the Bucs. They've got a nice mixture of some outstanding young players. The young linebacker they have as well, and veteran players, and that's it does actually look all of a sudden like a team that could be back in that part of the season where winners are found.
The Saints, Drew Brees announced his retirement 15 years to the date he signed with New Orleans. And they re-signed Jameis Winston to a 1-year deal worth up to $12 million, and Taysom Hill's 4-year, $140 million voidable extension creates some cap space for the Saints.
So who starts there week 1 then? How's that going to play out with that? Is it going to be
competition? Neil,
is there somebody else coming in? Do you think they're going to draft somebody or
nope
trade for Wilson or?
Nope. No, it's going to be Jameis Winston.
If he wins the competition, he didn't win it last year.
I don't think it's going to be a competition. I think the competition last year was done to give Taysom Hill a chance to prove that he can be the successor when Brees left, and when they put him in to play him at actual quarterback, which is the dumbest thing they did, is as far as trying to turn him into, a pocket passer against Philadelphia, and it blew up in their face. So they did him no justice last year as far as giving him the opportunities to take that job from Winston. Otherwise, you don't bring Winston back. And they can say competition all they want. Winston's going to be the starter day one. You're not going to convince me this competition is going to be for the starting job. This is Winston's job to lose.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, James. I think that's fair.
By the way, Deshaun Watson, if he really hates the Patriots, well, the Texans are doing their best to bring in former Patriots. And the two teams he's most linked with are the Patriots and the Miami Dolphins, led by a former Patriot coach. So Deshaun Watson better get over this hatred of the Patriot way rather quickly, because it's either going to stay in the Patriot way in Houston, be traded to the Patriot way in New England, or traded to the other Patriot way in Miami.
He's not going to the Patriots. You can't afford him.
He's coming. Yep.
I just
explained at the beginning of the show. I know it was an hour ago. How they can fit him in.
Yeah, if he's going anywhere in the AFC, he'll still be to the Jets.
Honestly, I heard the best proposal on Good Morning Football from the Miami Dolphins. It was a fake proposal, but the Dolphins trading Tua and 2 firsts for Deshaun Watson.
Enough. That's not enough.
Well, I mean, if you think Tua is a potential franchise quarterback, and then you can put more weapons around him with those 2 first-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
Yeah, so I don't think that's enough. But you never know. We'll see what happens. I wish something would happen, because you kind of feel like you need one of these dominoes to fall before we can really get cracking with trading quarterbacks around the league. It's be good to see him go soon.
Well, I don't think Russell Wilson's going anywhere. I do think Deshaun Watson is going to be on a new team. We just don't know when. And maybe Jimmy Garoppolo. But again, if it's not Jimmy in San Francisco, who's San Francisco going to go with?
Nick Mullins. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Jimmy Garoppolo, honestly. God.
I'm just saying, if the rumors are that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be moved, who is going to replace Jimmy Garoppolo? It's got to be somebody better than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Title game, completing 6 passes. Remember that.
He's, but you're not replacing. I don't know, Jay. Would you take him back? Would you think he's better than Cam Newton?
Yes, he's definitely better than Cam Newton.
At what?
At everything.
Oh my gosh. The only thing you did better than Cam Newton last year was miss games.
That's arguable.
His dress sense is probably better.
He's prettier, that's for sure. Prettiest looking man on the face of the earth.
I think Cam Newton's a attractive looking man, don't you think?
I'm not saying Cam Newton's not an attractive man, but he's not Jimmy Garoppolo attractive.
Oh gosh.
You said that was a little bit. You got to that point when you said that it just started to feel a bit creepy.
Good. That was my intent. Nextfanup@gmail.com. What are your thoughts on free agency? Send them to us at NFU Podcast on Twitter, Facebook.com/NFU Podcast. Another great place to continue the conversation. Monty does his best. He's posting stuff. He talks on Facebook all the time. So jump in the conversation. Have some conversations with us. We'd love to have you talk with us here on the podcast. Speaking of podcasts, make sure you tell a friend about the show, because we're going to be sitting here talking about free agency for the next 2 weeks. We got another show coming to you this weekend. And I think I can even tell you, I know you're going to be hearing from our Chiefs superfan. You're going to hear from our Bills superfan, our Seahawks superfan. I think Monty will probably get in there. James, our Texan superfan, will be jumping in on that show. So you're going to hear from a lot other voices over the weekend. So be sure you're following us wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening to right now. Make sure you're following us so that episode will automatically download into your listening device as soon as it is ready.
At least on Sunday, James, they're going to have a half decent producer, huh?
Oh boy.
Yeah, James was thinking, but I'm not going to say anything here, just because even though I agree with Neil.
Okay. Seahawks Justin learned everything from me, so I don't know how he could be a halfway decent producer other than he's only half of me.
And what did he do after those 10 minutes?
Okay.
Sorry, Jay. Come on, James. Be nice to Jay.
How dare you? We'll be back again next week with a similar format as they're usually the first 2 weeks of free agency is where it's all at, and then it sort of dies out. And then we'll have another weekend podcast next weekend. And that will be a little bit more conference focused, where they'll look at what all the teams have done in the separate divisions from a free agency standpoint. And they'll do more of that grading system there for you, Neil, on that particular show.
To be fair, Jay, and to give you a bit of kudos, I think Justin is more the Kendrick born, whereas you're much more the Jason Bourne.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Jason Bourne has nothing to do with football, but sure.
You take it, wouldn't you?
I'll take it. Yeah, sure.
Certainly better looking than Jimmy Garoppolo too.
Plus Matt Damon. I mean,
Yeah,
better.
absolutely,
No, Matt Damon not better looking than Jimmy Garoppolo. Come on.
What? You're
Not
kidding.
How did we get here?
Not even close.
Really?
Not even close.
Goodness gracious.
No.
Are we done? Are we done?
Come on, James. Jump in.
Who would you sooner go on a date with, James? Would you sooner go on a date with Matt Damon or Jimmy Garoppolo?
None of the above?
Really? I'd go out with Jason Bourne or Matt Damon any day of the week.
They both pale to Justin Timberlake.
No, come on. He's no, Jay.
And if I had my choice to come back in this life as anyone, I want to be Pitbull. I mean, that man has lived the life.
That's a fair shout.
Thank you.
He's got a life to be admired for sure.
This has been the Next Fan Up podcast. Here's Kofi Annan. There you have it.
Dear friends and colleagues, saying goodbye is never easy. I believe we can all feel proud of what we have done together, and through it all, you have maintained your professionalism and commitment and remained true to the spirit of the Charter. That principle.
We go out, we hit people in the mouth.
Come on, James.
You're horrible.
Yeah, with the program.
You're both horrible.
That was great. Come on. That's a perfect way to end the show, too.
I also think a night out with Cam Newton would be much better than a night out with Jimmy Garoppolo.
That is fair. I'll give you that one, Neil. You found the one.
Oh, gosh. How did we get here?
I think that is the reality, James. Come on. Don't tell me you don't fancy that.